Hey guys, I've got a evil opening to share with you today. It's interesting because somebody actually posted about this on a comment on one of my recent YouTube videos and said that this is what they always play in response to the Scandinavian. And the opening is called the Tennison Gambit. So it's really interesting because it's quite evil. And so somebody posted that the other day, and then today somebody's used this against me. And it didn't entirely go to plan, but I completely fell to pieces. So I want to share this with you for two reasons. First reason, you may be interested in playing this yourself, because I'm certainly going to be. And the second reason is you need to know how to spot it if somebody pulls it out against you. Okay, so let me take you through it. So I've got starting positions here. And like I say, there's a couple of ways of playing. You could start with e4, so that you play this as white. And then if your opponent plays the Scandinavian with d5 on the first move, then you can play knight to f3, which seems to be offering up a pawn for free. So what's most likely to happen is that black will capture the pawn. Now what you do is you move your knight to g5, attacking the pawn. Alright? Now black is up a pawn and is feeling quite comfortable, thinks you've just probably blundered a pawn, and so he's going to want to try and maybe defend this pawn. In general, that is a distinctive feature of a lot of gambits, and you probably shouldn't try and defend or retain your extra pawn if you've accepted a gambit. But anyway, there's a few ways of doing it. I think f5 doesn't look very attractive at all because you're moving your f pawn, you've opened up this diagonal towards your king. Your white could have ideas of coming in with a queen, all kinds of different things. I mean, that's not the best move, but you're definitely weakening your position here, so I don't think that's very likely. I think there's bishop to f5 as well, but this bishop again is undefended, so could fall foul, for example, to like pawn to g4, trying to kick the bishop away, and other things like that. I think the far more likely is going to be simply knight to f6, and this is actually what I played as well in the game that I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so knight to f6 is played, and now you throw in d3, and black now thinks, hey, look, I'm up a pawn, I've captured a pawn there, I've got doubled pawns here. This guy, extended out that far out in front isn't likely to survive very long. So he's very likely just to go, okay, I'll swap him off. Okay, and that's kind of what you're banking on. Is your response as white is then to recapture with your light squared bishop. All right. Now in the next move, if black now thinks I'm going to simply kick the knight away, then you will be rubbing your hands with glee. Right, this is now a very winning position for white. And let's see. I mean, can you spot the continuation from here? Okay, so it's a move with the knight, and you go in and sacrifice the knight with knight captures f7. Now the danger clearly is, I mean, it's not even a danger, it's a very real threat, is that here goes the cockerel. He waits until I record to do that, by the way. Yeah, so the knight is attacking the queen and attacking the rook. So if the queen moves out, has to come forward onto the board, let's say something like that, then white's simply going to capture the rook and have a huge advantage in the game. You've even got then bishop to come in here and stuff like that. So it's going to be absolutely horrible for black. So let's say black plays a move like that. You've got bishop out to there. There's nothing that I can do other than this. Has to come there with check. The king's forced back, and then same difference, and you've lost your queen as well. So very nasty situation. So if if h6 is played, knight captures, and the king can't really capture the knight. This is the problem. Because if king captures knight, you've then got, because you notice we've got completely open d-file, bishop to g6 check. The king cannot stay there and cannot retreat because it would still be in check. So he's only got 3 options. He can come out into the board, which would be crazy. He could go to g8, which would be very bad indeed, or capture the bishop, which is the most likely. But whatever that king does, white captures black's queen. So let's look at an alternative move order to start this. This is actually what I faced today, which is instead of playing e4, d5 for the Scandinavian, because you won't get, d5 is not the most common response. It's not, I don't think it's a particularly good opening. So something else that you could consider as well is knight to f3 in the first move. Now clearly black's going to be thinking, okay, I want to control the centre and follow good opening principles, but black clearly can't play pawn to e5 because the knight will just grab it and say thank you very much. So the next most common idea is going to be to play d5, and then you can simply play e4, oh no my pawn, right, blundering your pawn apparently, and then continue the opening like this. So this is actually completely fine still for black. The engine has this at 1.5 in black's favour. So you can go ahead and capture the pawn. And now if white captures there, all you really need to remember to do is not to try and kick this knight with h6. In fact, I think that knight to c6 is perfectly good, because what that's doing is it's also defending your queen. So whatever this bishop tries to do, wherever this bishop goes, and then if at any point, let's say now you try and do that, for example, oh no you can't because it's the knight would be pinned there, but yeah, in principle this situation is perfectly fine for black. Black is actually in a quite advantageous position. You just have to remember not to play that move basically. So let me show you the game that I played today. It didn't go entirely to plan for my opponent, but it's clear that he knew what he was doing, and yet I still completely fell to bits, right? So here's the game. I'm playing with the black pieces, and my opponent actually starts with the knight to f3 move, and I, being somebody who understands my opening theory and principles, I play d5 to try and control the centre. Okay, now e4 comes, and I think this guy's a gung-ho. He's only taken 2 seconds and he's lost the pawn already. So I grab the pawn and say thank you very much, and now the knight jumps around and I'm thinking, what is this guy doing? So I just defend my extra pawn quite happily, and now d3 comes, and we've seen all of this, haven't we? And what do? I grab the pawn, because these are all very natural moves. That's one of the nice things about this opening. Bishop captures, and now instead of playing h6, so I'd like to say that I was very smart and spotted the gambit, but of course I didn't. I bring my bishop out to attack white's queen. Obviously it's inviting this f3 push, which kicks the bishop, and now the bishop retreats to h5. So I'm doing all right here. I'm not. The nice thing about this moving the bishop here is that it defends against the idea of the bishop coming down to g6 later on. However, I still managed to hang myself in this game. So g4 is played, kicking the bishop. I only really have one place to go, which is g6. And now bishop takes bishop. And now I blunder, because when I analysed this game, what it said was I should have taken the queen. Right, so if I'd have taken white's queen, king takes queen is pretty much forced, and then white has lost castling rights, won't be able to castle. All I need to do is move my knight out, and then I can castle queenside, probably with check even. So it should have been queen takes queen, king takes queen, then recapture the bishop. What I did in the game was a blunder. and really turned a winning position into a completely losing one. So I captured the bishop, and I took less than a second to think about it, right? I've got 9.5 minutes still on the clock in a 10-minute game. My opponent has only used 7 seconds of his time. He quite clearly racks up quite a few rating points using this. So anyway, I instantly recaptured, and I think this is one of the key things. This is one of the big differences that you see between beginner players and players as they get stronger, is that beginners almost always seem to react to something like a capture or a threat like that with the obvious move. And particularly when there's been a capture, you want to recapture, and you recapture almost straight away. Whereas more experienced players, you will see, will take more time, consider all the options. Are there counterattacks, for example? You know, there's always things to consider at least, and then they choose the best response that they can find. So if I'd have done that in this situation, I might have seen that I could have taken white's queen and been in a very good situation. However, I had fallen into the classic trap by thinking that my opponent was just some gung-ho idiot who didn't know what he was doing and blundering his material. And I was trying to show off by trying to take him to pieces very quickly, but as you'll see, it blew up in my face. So white's queen took my queen, and then of course there's only one move. I have to recapture with a king, and then you can see knight takes f7 with a fork on the rook and the king. I have to move my king away. Knight takes my rook, so now I'm a full rook down, and I've got double pawns. I start thinking about bringing my knight out. He captures my another pawn, and it's just horrible from this point on, really. You know, he just swaps off material. I'm way down, and there's only one way this game's going to go. So, interesting new opening, interesting new trappy, evil, horrible opening. You might want to use it yourself, but even if you don't use it yourself, I'm certainly going to be. Even if you don't use it yourself, look out for it and know how to respond. Okay, and the key thing is not kicking that knight. That's all, pretty much all you have to remember. Before that, up till that, you can carry on. Follow the Tennison Gambit. Just remember, that is the tripwire. Okay, if you don't fall for that, you should have a good game. All right, enjoy yourself with it, and watch out for it. I'll see you soon.